Okay, ladies and gentlemen, this is our second seminar of the day. This is presented by Conor Nolan of Boira Consultants, and it's entitled Navigating Chaos Strategy in the Private Hire Industry. Conor, over to you.
Thank you. That's just for me, not for Conor.
Of course. So, well, thanks for coming here today anyway. So, as everyone here in the industry is aware, the industry at the moment is in a state of flux. Has been, you could argue, back to 2020 since COVID, really changed the game for everyone in the industry. But where we are is in a situation where you're dealing with issues to do with tax, employment, licensing, amongst other competitive issues, such as dealing with increasing consumer demand, both from drivers and passengers. So particularly for those who are private hire operators, really interesting time. But it's also equally as relevant for suppliers to the industry, such as dispatch systems or even call centers. So this flux, I would call, is really down to the consolidation of the industry, or which in this life cycle here in front of you is also known as maturity. So that means is where the demand of customers and the supply available have caught up with each other. And this has led to some really interesting changes in the industry, as I'm sure anyone who follows any of the periodicals in the industry, quite a lot of change, quite a lot of movement. The suppliers purchasing each other, there are other operators also purchasing each other. So it's a really interesting time to be part of the industry. But in saying that, it brings its challenges, but it also brings its opportunities. And when I say that, how does it affect us? What's it mean, this consolidation? So it means that consumers are getting more demanding because there's more suppliers available, as I'm sure anybody from a dispatch system will know. People want more for less. It's equally relevant from drivers, and it's also equally relevant from passengers. It is quite a tricky time to keep all the stakeholders happy. And with firms, as firms consolidate, you're going to have fewer and fewer independent firms. So that means that there's going to be an increase in larger firms. As you can probably see, as I said, not to name any of them, I don't think I need to. There are firms buying lots of independent firms, and it's gradually what you're going to see is a reduction in the number of independent firms. That's not to say there isn't an opportunity for the independent firm, but it does mean you need to be clever with how you take on these larger firms and the greater competition that's involved. Well, what's that mean? Why should we care about this consolidation? Well, it affects us all. As a supplier to the industry, if you're having fewer and fewer independent firms, that's potentially a lesser target pool. Also means greater competition, pricing strains, and things like this. As I said before, customer expects more for less, which unfortunately is certainly the case in most walks of this industry, or indeed most walks of life that do reach this consolidation phase. And there's increased M&A, as I've said multiple times throughout, but that is the general theme at the moment. There's a lot of mergers and acquisitions, companies buying each other. Even the ride-hailing apps are buying other companies, as you can probably know, with the likes of Get. Well, what can we do? How can we navigate this change? If I sound pessimistic, I apologize, but I'm not. I'm quite optimistic about what we can do. It's how you can strategically plan to get through this change. You can succeed if you have a coherent plan. A lot easier said than done. I appreciate that. I wouldn't be here today if that wasn't the case. But in doing that, we really need to take into some considerations. Well, what is strategy? Many people and a lot of circles would say something along the lines of, oh, aim for the stars and you land on the moon. Well, that sounds like a nice statement, but that's not really going to get you anywhere unless you have a lot of backroom planning. A strategy is more as a coherent approach to these problems, where you leverage your unique situation. And that's something that I really want to focus on here. Each person in this industry is unique. Each one of your situations is unique. We have the global issues, such as the taxation. How do we treat taxation in the industry? We look at the legal issues, or challenges, I'd rather say, and in terms of employment and all the other issues that come with that, and the increased competition as a general rule. Technology, the use of AI, self-driving vehicles, these are some wider threats to the industry. But in your own local environments, so where you actually are, that is, if not more important, in how you manage this consolidating industry. Because each of your scenarios is unique to you. For example, if we look at a dispatch system, one dispatch system has a very different reality or environment to another one. Same with an operator. If you have an operator in Wolverhampton, they have a very different local environment to another one in, say, Eastbourne, for example. It's very different, and how you approach each of these scenarios has to be unique to you, and strategic planning must come from your own point of view. And that's why I focus on that. You don't exist in a vacuum. None of us are just standalone, we're here, and that's it. No, there's other factors. There's the more, socioeconomical factors of the UK in general. Again, the legal issues and your actual environment. And that also will help you identify who your actual competitor is. Because more often than not, it's not who you think it is, depending on your own business model and your target markets. And then this is to show a really good use of strategy is Ryanair. As I'm sure everyone in this room is familiar with the likes of Ryanair. But what's their strategy? They're the low-cost airline. That they are. That's what they do. That's their strategy. And on that, just a quick question. Does anyone here think Ryanair will put in more luxurious, comfortable seats in any of their aircraft? No, thank you, sir. No, they won't. Yeah, so Michael O'Leary's famously said that if he could get rid of all seats altogether and have you standing, he would. But because he can fit more rows of seats, meaning he can make more money based on his low-cost airline model. It's a fantastic example of strategy. And every decision that Ryanair would make would be based on this. Well, should we serve Caesar salad on our in-flight meals? Well, does that overlap with us being the low-cost airline? Well, if they can do it at low cost, probably. Otherwise, no. The answer will be no. And it helps keep a coherent approach to how they tackle their unique environment. And when we look at how we plan our way through this change, we need to have a very hard look in the mirror, warts and all. We need to see, where am I? What's going on? How am I actually performing? What are my actual strengths? What are my actual weaknesses? That's not easy, because we have biases. We often think we can do more than we can. And also overcome any assumptions. We need to challenge our assumptions. We go, oh, I know what customers are willing to pay this, or drivers are willing to pay me 50% commission. Oh, maybe they're not. We need to take a really hard look in the mirror and go, well, where are we now? To then go, okay, this is where I am. Now, where do I want to be? What is my overriding goal of how am I going to get there? And that takes a lot of soul searching and time. And unfortunately, that's the downside. It takes a hard look in the mirror. And it has to be in line with where you actually are. Because there's no point trying to do a low-cost airline model like the Ryanair if you're flying from Dublin to Heathrow every route. That's an expensive route. Ryanair fly to Luton. It's cheaper. That's why they do it. And we'll go back to them. So it's a very easy example because most of us here will have flown on Ryanair. And we know that just how horrible the seats are, but they're the best option for those who want a cost-effective means of transportation. And what about with mergers and acquisitions? That's a major side of this industry at the moment. Do you think there's a strategy required for M&A? Any idea? Yeah, you're nodding. Yeah, there is. Of course there is. You can't just go, I'm going to have you. I'm going to buy this company in the north of Scotland when you're based in the south of England and Cornwall. It's going to be hard to manage unless it serves some overriding goal that you're trying to achieve. And then there's all the other issues that come in about how you're going to legally structure the deal. How are you going to integrate your staff in with that business? How are you going to implement your models? Possibly you want to change the dispatch system. The costs go up and up. So if you haven't planned this properly, you've got increased risk. You're losing some money on a deal that you thought was going to be great, a gold mine, when in reality it's actually a heartache. But that comes with forward thinking and forward planning. And again, it has to be coherent to a strategy. Well, you could decide, well, I'm going to start in South London, and I want to become the biggest operator in South London. Well, how are you going to do that? Okay, I'm going to buy my local firm's 20-car firm. Right, well, what's the strategy to do that? How are you going to raise the funds? How are you going to integrate that company? Then what are your next 5 steps after that? Also worth wargaming, but how are your competitors going to respond as well? But that's a topic for another conversation. And as I said, you need to understand your reality, because it's all great having a strategy, but I think Mike Tyson summed it up wonderfully. Everyone has a plan to get punched in the mouth. It's great. It sums it up. You know, the military say no plan survives contact with the enemy. And it's true. Sometimes plans go out the window. And that's where it's really important to understand the reality you're facing. Do you pivot? Do you stick? You can have the most detailed plan based on a set of assumptions. What if it's wrong? What if your competitor acts differently? Do you stick it out? You're going to be rigid with the plan you made? You're going to actually go, well, do you know what? This isn't what I thought it was going to be. I'm going to have to adapt myself and my business approach to survive. And I think the best example of this is the likes of commander's intent, for anyone familiar with the military. So commander's intent, for those who don't know, is when the commander says, this is your mission, you're to take this objective. And these are the terms in which you're to do it. No civilian casualties. Right. So therefore, when you have troops on the ground and they're facing this reality, trying to take the objective, and the civilians in the interim, they're clearly not going to bomb or use any form of artillery on an area where there could be civilians. It goes utterly against their objective. No civilian casualties. But they can use their own initiative to try and achieve the objective in line with commander's intent. And I think it's a very good example of how businesses can apply that logic of this is our overriding strategy, but we need to be flexible enough to know when to pivot. Because otherwise we could just end up messing it up completely. And, well, just in conclusion, well, what does this all mean? Well, what this means is it's hard work to suss out where you really are in the industry. Your local environment is key. Understanding truthfully where do you lie. And for those anyone I see some, for example, Cat 9 jackets in the audience, their reality will be very different to an operator, which will be different to a call center, which will be different to the likes of lead aggregators. Each environment is very different, and no strategy will work for across the board. You need to do the work. And there are people there, like myself, who are happy to help in doing that. Because what you can get is consider where you are, or where you want to be, and plan how you're going to get there. But the biggest thing is understanding that sometimes you do need to iterate. Sometimes you make a plan all the best intents, make some good critical assumptions, and people just do something utterly different. So we really need to look at facing those challenges, understanding where to pivot, learn from what works, what doesn't, and keep iterating on what works to get where you're trying to be, which I'd say for everyone in this audience would be growth or sale or increased sales. Well, I hope increased sales and lower expenses, because that's what most of us would ultimately want in this day and age. And that leads me on to just a brief Q&A. If anyone has any questions or observations about the industry in general at this moment in time. As I said, just to recap on a very interesting observation and how the industry has changed. If you think when Uber entered the market in 2012, think of how many ride-hailing apps there are in the UK now. Notwithstanding, the private operators do use app-based booking systems. There's lots. It's understanding how can you be different, how can you survive in this environment, what makes you stand out, what makes you different. And it's a really good, I think, closing point that can make a big difference to your businesses, no matter where you come from. But has anyone got any questions or observations of the industry in general? I'm happy to have a informed discussion on any of those topics of the industry as a whole. Yeah.
Andrew Westcott from Visa. I was just interested, given your title, chaos, maybe you call it uncertainty in the market at the moment, with a number of sort of external issues going on. Do you see? Oh, sorry. I'll start again. Sorry. Andrew Westcott from Visa. You've talked about chaos in the market. Some might call it uncertainty. I just wondered, do you see greater consolidation coming down the line, or a bit of a freeze on all that, given there are quite a lot of issues to resolve?
I don't think so. I think, isn't it, Sun Tzu has said, opportunity and chaos. But those who are less risk averse will absolutely take advantage of that. Because some people may be going, that's absolutely fine. This may not be for everyone. Some businesses may go, I want out. I've had enough of this nonsense of having to pivot, having to iterate. I'm tired of having to stay up to date with legal issues, with tax issues, with licensing legislation being what it is, and each local authority being different. It's quite a minefield to navigate. Some people may just be burnt out and have fatigue, and that's also fine. But you get other businesses who are very happy to come in and take them. It's a chance for growth. Banks did it in the 90s. It's the opportunity. Those who are less risk averse will either reap the reward or fortunately the downside if it doesn't work. That's why for those companies that do keep consolidating, strategy is pivotal. Because if you're buying companies just for the sake of it, where are you going to be? If you make some bad investments, like with anything, it's investment, there's risk. How much risk are you willing to accept? And I think that's what will dictate it. But I do think it's going to reach the consolidation stage until it declines. Or something causes the life cycle to reset, such as another change either in legislation or some new industry technology is going to reset that clock. Like when Uber came in with ride hailing, they had the line checks and the first ones to really do it successfully. So they enjoyed almost a monopoly for a long time until the rest of the industry caught up, and the close followers managed to start replicating and then competing again with them. So it's a very good question, but I do think we'll see far more consolidation, and there's plenty of companies out there, even out in the main exhibition area, who are very happy to keep consolidating, and that's their prerogative. And there are many other companies I would wager would do the same. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Anyone else got a question? Okay, let's flip this around. In terms of keeping are there many operators in this room? Out of curiosity. Thanks. Okay, so to the operators, how are you finding trying to keep both drivers and passengers happy at this moment in time? Are they your customer, or are they just how do you treat them? You're very fortunate, and of course they come first. They are your customer, because if depending on your business model, I don't want to make any assumptions.
We like it to be like that. It's not because we're short of money.
Certainly most areas are. There are limited exceptions. Yeah, where many drivers left the industry.
We lost a lot of Eastern Europeans. We lost none through Brexit, also. But COVID will
You can understand that it's sure for a lot of people that how important having family around is. But in terms of that, they are your customer. If you're working as an agent and you're not employing drivers, they are absolutely your customer. So keeping drivers happy for most operators will be pivotal. There are a select few that don't treat drivers as the customers, but they are. That's why you're so unique. This industry is so unique. You need to keep the passengers happy who you don't even get direct fees from, let's be honest. The driver gets the fare, rightly so, because they're the one out there driving the car. But you need to keep the driver happy. And it is a really difficult but fascinating balancing act. Does anyone else have any other comments on that? Any other of the operators? No.
I'll just say we had the same problem, same shoe. I'll just say we had the same problem, but what we found to resolve the problem was to lower our standards on drivers. So we take any driver on and put up our prices. Because before we'd done that, we were very hard, struggling to supply a driver to put the customer's bookings. So we weren't providing the service. So once we lowered our standards for drivers and putting our prices up for the public, for the fares, we started attracting more and more drivers. Now we've got 3 times as many drivers as we had before, after the initial COVID problems. And it's starting to resolve it, but our standards have dropped.
It's a trade-off, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you keep your drivers happy, they're earning more,
Yeah,
they're
happy,
happy.
they're earning the money, our job count's gone way up. Customers aren't so happy, but they're paying more, but they're getting the service now. They just have to pay more for it.
It's a fascinating trade-off,
Yeah.
isn't it? It's someone's got to suffer somewhere.
Yeah, but it's working.
If without the drivers, no one gets transported,
Yeah,
ultimately. And that is the trick of this industry. That's a fascinating observation, by the way, of the dropping the standards as well. You hit them on 2 counts.
Yeah, but it's, like I say, it's working. We might have to change that again in the future, but for now it's okay.
That's it. And you've just raised something very, very pertinent there, is getting a competitive advantage or managing to stay on top of that balancing act does require constant attention. What works today may not work tomorrow.
Definitely.
Yeah, exactly. That's the trick. That's why some people can get fatigue and go, I've had enough of this, I want to sell out.
I relate to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for your input. That was very enlightening. And has anyone else got a question? Anything like that? No? Fair enough. Look, I'm not going to keep you as hostages any longer, but in the end, the real important thing just to do is, and as rightly highlighted, is how you manage, and I think so you mentioned very rightly, that was a very good example of the trade-off and how you plan to strategically manage this industry. It is tricky. It is hard. and to be honest, I speak to plenty of operators who will attest to driver shortages. To certain areas have too many drivers, not enough bookings, which is not the norm, but it is out there. But that's why each area is unique, unfortunately. And I think that's where a lot of us find that very tricky. Getting drivers into the industry isn't exactly easy, because many local authorities are prohibitive. Be prohibitive. There's a very high barrier of entry for a lot of areas. So often some creative planning needs to be put in place to get drivers in shortages. But if no one's got any questions, I think I'll wrap it up and send you on your merry way. But thank you for your time.
We thank Colin.